local economy. Doon sa RPS, sinabi ni Professor Serrota that to understand the structure of the local economy, imagine a pie slice divided into three. Okay? We have the primary, tertiary, and secondary. Okay? So, you divide the pie into three parts. And yung parts na yon represents the primary, tertiary, and secondary. So, yung size of one slice represents the relative share of that sector to the total economy. So, dito sa slice sa pie natin, yung primary, ang relative size niya is 50%. Yung tertiary, ang relative size niya is 30%. And then yung secondary is 20%. Okay? So, ano yung activities na meron doon sa bawat economic sector? Okay? So, sa primary sector, this sector include activities that depend on the utilization of natural resources, such as earth, okay, water, lands, trees, minerals. Okay, so these are ito yung mga activities. Example, agriculture, livestock, fishery, and forestry. Okay, yung mga job types within the primary sector, we call it the red-collar jobs. Okay, primarily because the work or the nature of work is outdoor. So it's the primary sector. The secondary sector, it deals with activities that involve production of finished goods. Okay, so kasama dito yung mining and quarrying, manufacturing, electricity, gas and water, and then construction. Okay, so secondary, there is an activity that transforms the raw materials extracted in the primary sector into valuable goods. Okay, and then kung sa primary, meron tayong red-collar jobs. Sa secondary, ang tawag natin ay blue-collar jobs. Okay? For the tertiary, okay, tertiary sector, also referred to as the service industry. Okay? This sector of the economy deals with activities involving both the production as well as exchange. Okay? Production is providing consumable services. Exchange, on the other hand, involves services that overcome the distance, like transport, trade, and communication. So, ang sample sa slide natin, we have wholesale and retail trade, transportation, storage and communication, finance, insurance, real estate, and business services. And then community, social, and personal services. Okay? So, kung blue-collar yung secondary, yung tertiary are white-collar jobs. And then, yung tertiary can be, merong dalawang subsectors, yung quaternary and quinary. Okay? So, etong quaternary is famously known as the knowledge economy. So, tinawag siyang knowledge economy primarily because it involves activities that deals with specialized or intellectual activities. No? It has something to do with innovation and technology. Okay? And then another subsector is the quinary. Okay? It is the highest level of decision-making in a society or in economy. Okay? So ano yung mga kasama sa quinary sector? Okay? Kasama dito yung police. It may include police and fire departments, which are public service organizations, or non-profit organizations still contributing to the economy by providing free services. Okay? So, ang tawag naman sa quinary sector is the gold-collar jobs or professionals. Okay? Gold-collar professionals. Why? Because they represent highly skilled senior business executives, government officials, scientists, legal and financial consultants. Okay? So, again, to understand the local economy, we see Professor Serrota used itong pie slides into three different parts. Okay, let's continue to the level of urbanization. So, kapag meron ng data doon sa locality, pwede nang i-manipulate yung mga data. And various manipulations are possible. Now, dito sa level of urbanization, ang ginagamit natin na measuring variable is employment. So the formula for the level of urbanization is employment of the secondary sector plus employment of the tertiary sector divided by the sum total of employment of the primary, secondary, and tertiary multiplied by 100. So what you get is a ratio. If you obtain a ratio which is below 50%, it indicates that the place is predominantly rural. If the ratio is above 50%, the place is deemed urban. Okay? Now, um, yung meron diniscuss si Professor Serote yung structural shift, no, doon sa mga sectors. What you do is to look for the shift over time. No? Say for example, you compare yung level of urbanization, or rather you compare yung employment under the secondary, tertiary, and primary over time, and then makita mo kung there's a structural shift, if there is a reduction, say, sa primary, and then nag-shift yung ratio or nag-increase yung ratio sa tertiary. So, makikita mo if there is a structural shift by simply comparing yung previous rate doon sa current rate or yung latest rate that you have. All right, let's proceed to determining the area specialization or the town specialization. Okay. So, ang first concept that was introduced is the location quotient. Okay, the location quotient compares concentration of a sector or industry to the provincial or national or industry sector. National sector or industry. Now, when you compute for the location quotient, okay, bear in mind that you are comparing two areas. Okay, one area is yung smaller part, which forms part of the larger area. Say the town and the province. Okay, where the town is part of the province. Okay, so location quotient is useful for identifying competitive advantage. And location quotient is a ratio of ratios. So the answer is always an absolute number. So the formula for location quotient is area specialization variable divided by the area reference variable. Okay. And then you divide it by the results of larger area specialization variable divided by the larger area reference variable. Right. Suppose the measuring unit is employment and the areas being compared are town A and its mother province B, then the location quotient for a particular sector or activity, say agriculture, is computed as follows. So location quotient for agriculture. The formula is number of persons employed in agriculture in town A divided by the number of persons employed in all sectors in town A. Okay, and then with the results, you divide it with the number of persons employed in agriculture in province B divided by the number of persons employed in all sectors in province B. Okay. Assuming that you obtain the results, these are the interpretations. If the location quotient is greater than 1, then the town is more specialized than the province as a whole in the type of economic activity. Okay? If the location quotient is less than 1, the town is less specialized in that activity or sector than the province as a whole. If the location quotient is equal to 1, the activity is equally important in both the town and the province. Right, so let's can you do the computation for this example? So derive the location quotient for the following. Location quotient for agriculture of San Roque. Location quotient for forestry for the town of San Andres. And location quotient for fishery for the town of San Vicente. So, isahin muna natin. First is San Roque. What is the location quotient for agriculture for San Roque? Please input your responses sa chat box. Okay, we have two responses. What about the others? We have four responses. Five responses so far. Seven, eight, okay. Please compute yung location quotient for San Andres, Forest Street. We have two responses. Three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. Okay, sige po, let's proceed to San Vicente Fishery. Location quotient. One response. Okay, we have 10 responses. I'd rather two, four, six, eight responses. Point. Okay po tayo? Sige. Alright. Can you tell me on the chat box, which town is more specialized? Which town is more specialized? Is it San Roque, San Andres, or San Vicente? Okay. San Roque. Okay. Which town is less specialized? I think which town is less specialized? San Vicente, Okay. Nagkukumpit pa po ba kayo? We have one response for more special, two responses for more specialized and one response for less specialized. Sige po, I'll be revealing the answers, no? Okay, so these are the answers, no? For agriculture ng San Roque, okay, the location quotient is 2.39, more specialized. So may mga nakakuha ng tamang sagot. For San Andres, forestry is 0.78. I think lahat yata kanina tama, no? Which is less specialized, no? Less than 1. And then for San Vicente Fishery, 0.53, this is also less specialized. Okay po? So, kung mapapansin niyo po doon sa table, merong missing numbers, no? So, inasama ko siya sa i-compute ninyo. Alright? So, baka doon nagkaroon ng error. Let me check. Kanina may sumagot doon sa dito kay San Roque. Pinukumpute kay San Roque, baka transfer error tong 0.24 or 2.4 is round off, no? It's 2.39. Okay po? Questions? Wala naman po? Okay, sige po. So, okay na tayo sa location quotient. Alright, now let's proceed to economic linkages. Yung interpretation ng specialization ay depende sa work type. Depende dito sa economy. Okay? Depende sa economy. Okay? Depende kung anong in-identify na economy. Okay? Or sector. Okay, ano sabi natin dito? Concentration of a sector or industry. Okay? So, ang kino-compare sa location quotient is concentration of a sector or the industry. So, kung merong certain job sa ang sector siya nagpo-fall. So, doon siya ma-identify. Okay? Let's proceed to economic linkages. Okay, now, yung data doon sa area specialization can also be used to identify other activities which might be promoted doon sa locality na yan. Okay? So, meron tayong common types of economic linkages. So, ito yung nakalagay sa RPS. We have 6 types. No? First is the backward economic linkage, an activity or industry that provides input materials and services to, say, agriculture. Example, farm implements, fertilizers, pesticides, certified seeds is linked in a backward manner. We have the forward linkage, an activity that uses the output of a particular activity, okay? Say sugar milling. Examples, candies, soft drinks, confectionery is linked in a forward manner. And then we have vertical, okay, where 2 or more firms produce components of a final output. Okay, one example is parts of a car. Okay. Next, we have horizontal, where 2 or more firms produce complete products that are complementary in use. So examples, we have furniture shops, each specializing in one type of furniture like chairs, tables, cabinets, beds, for examples. Next, we have diagonal linkage, okay, where a service cuts across different types of firms. Examples, we have security services. Again, security services cuts across different types of firms. No? Whether it's just a restaurant, whether it's just a box. Insurance, no? Messengerial or forwarding services. Okay, it can provide services to different types of firms. And then we have residential, okay, where services to the employees or managerial staff are provided by firms or households. Examples, we have housing, recreation, and then food catering. So yung first 2 types, no, yung first 2, yung forward, yung backward, and forward are known as production linkages. Okay. The rest, the others, may be referred to as distribution or as trade and service linkages. If they do not benefit from the production linkage in backward and forward, ang tawag natin sa kanila ay, it's ancillary linkages. Okay, ancillary linkages or ancillary industries. Okay, let's check. Okay, balikan natin to. Backward, forward, vertical, horizontal, diagonal, and residential. Okay, let's identify. Anong linkage to? Please use the chat box. Anong linkage? Etong pesticides, fertilizers, and certified seeds. Okay, we have 4 responses. Okay, thank you. Sige, gising na gising. So, that is, sorry, a backward linkage. Okay? Next, what about this one? Circuit board, antenna, okay, pinuproduce ng isang company. Okay? Liquid crystal display being produced by another company, or the LCD. Keyboard is being produced by one company. Microphone is being produced by one company. And then yung speaker and battery. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? May vertical, may ancillary, may horizontal. Okay? What about the others? It is, okay? Ayan, may change of answer. Okay? So, the answer is vertical. Okay? It's a vertical linkage. Okay po? Okay, next. What about this one? Okay, so drivers for buses, private cars, Grab and Uber, trains and taxis, and then customer service officers for banks, service centers, airport, restaurants, telcos, and waiters for restaurants, hotels, and carinderia. Okay. We have skin, residentially, and diagonal. Okay. Residentially, diagonal. Okay. Balikan natin yung definition natin ng residentially and then diagonal. Kasi doon merong maraming responses, no? Where a service cuts across different types of firms. Okay? And then, kapag residentially, where services to the employees or managerial staff are provided by firms or households. Okay? So, ano to? It is diagonal. Okay? Next, what about this one? Services for the employees, such as housing, lodging, recreation or amusement, entertainment, food, school. Okay? Okay? Sige po, what about the others? So, the correct answer is residentially. Okay? What about this one? Complete products. Okay. 4 responses. Horizontal. Okay, so the answer is horizontal. Okay, this one. Rice production for steamed rice, rice flour, rice vinegar, and rice milk. This is this. Okay, so this is forward linkage. Okay, forward linkage. Okay po, thank you very much for participating sa ating quick activity. Right? So, sabi dito, the information gathered about production linkages may be the basis for a more detailed investigation into the feasibility of attracting new firms that have either a backward or a forward linkage with the local industry to locate in the area. Okay? Notice that meron pa ring merong mga industries na nag-locate in the area na hindi nag-benefit from production linkages. And again, we mentioned it earlier, we call them the ancillary industries or ancillary linkages. Okay. You're looking at Gunnar Myrdal's concept of cumulative causation, okay, or the spread or multiplier effect. Okay. This model represents various activities that are induced by and linked with newly located industry in the area. Kaya itong back sa taas, no, ang focus, ang label niya is location of new industry. Okay, now, yung length ng loop, okay, kasi may naglo-loop siya, no? So, say for example, etong expansion of local employment and population and then increasing local trained industry labor, may arrow public sa location of new industry. So, that's one loop, no? Sabi ni Professor Sirota, the length of each loop indicates the relative duration of time it takes to complete the cycle. So, dinivide ni Gunnar Myrdal yung time into short term, medium term, and long term. Okay, sabi niya dito, the production linkages are completed in the shortest term. Completed in the shortest term is etong development of the external economies for farmers' production. Kasi it starts with developing a ancillary industry to supply farmer with inputs and then development of external economies for farmers' production. So this is completed in short term. Okay? The other linkages na nagmamaterialize in medium term is etong dalawa in yellow. Okay, etong attraction of capital and enterprise to exploit expanding demands for locally produced goods and services, and expansion of service industries and others serving local market. Okay. So, etong green is short term, etong dalawang yellow, they are completed in medium term. Notice etong development of external economies for farmers' production is a forward linkage. Etong attraction of capital is considered to be a trade and distribution linkage. Whereas etong expansion of service industries and others serving local market is classified as service or residential linkage because these are service industries serving local market. Remember, pag binalikan natin kanina yung residential, ang focus niya ay for employees. Housing, lodging, recreation, amusement. No? So, ang classification niya is residential linkage. Okay. Now, another simple way to comprehend the local economy is to assume na yung geographical territory, okay, yung territorial component ng locality is a closed spatial system similar to a water tank na merong inlet pipe and meron ding outlet pipe. Okay? Now, yung amount of water that is stored in the tank at any time is the net of the inflow and the outflow, assuming that both the inlet and the outlet valves are open at the same time. Okay? So, merong outflow, merong inflow. When the inflow is greater than the outflow, merong net storage. No? When the outflow is equal or greater than the inflow, walang storage. Now, ano yung mga inflow transactions? ERA shares from the local government unit is an inflow transaction. The ERA is now called NTA, okay? The National Tax Allocation. Okay? Salaries of national government agencies personnel posted in the locality is also an inflow. Homeward remittances of locals working elsewhere, that's an inflow transaction. Earnings of local capital invested elsewhere, still an inflow transaction. Export sales of local products, foreign funded projects implemented in the locality, receipts from tourism, receipts from services to outsiders, capital lent by banks to local residents, and inbound investments. Ano naman yung mga outflow transactions? Municipal share to provincial government taxes, yung nire-remit ng municipality to the provincial government. Outside purchases of the local government, okay, purchase somewhere else. Outside purchases of local household is also an outflow transaction. Imports of local business establishments, school expenses of locals studying elsewhere because they're spending their money elsewhere, profits of investors remitted elsewhere, salaries paid to workers in the locality who lives elsewhere, local savings invested by commercial banks elsewhere, insurance premiums paid by local is also an outflow transaction, and outbound investments by locals. Okay. So again, we mentioned earlier that when the inflow is greater than the outflow, there is net storage. However, when the outflow is equal to or greater than the inflow, then there is no storage. Okay? Assuming that the inlet and the outlet valves are open. So, ito yung consequences. When the outflow is equal or greater than the inflow, there is no storage possible. Okay? When the inflow is greater than the outflow, there is net storage. Now, when there is no storage. These are the possible interventions. You increase the magnitude and rate of the inflow. You decrease the magnitude and rate of the outflow, or you adopt both measures at the same time. When there is a storage, okay, this is the possible intervention. You direct policy and development towards money circulation and growth. Kasi meron ka ng storage. So, money circulation and growth. Okay. This is the area income growth. Okay? So, sabi sa source book natin, money that is simply stored does not grow. And for money to grow, it must circulate. Okay? Money acquires added value every time it changes hands kapag naging iba. And the process of area income multiplication is illustrated in this table. And this is from Ben David Val. Okay? So, siya yung gumawa nito. Now, assuming that the inflow of 100 and merong 40% rate of outflow, okay, yung area income generated is nakikip yung 60. If that 60 is spent, okay, mag-leak yung 24, and then yung area income generated is 36. And then it continues until the 7th round. Now, sa table na to, makikita natin if the money is actually spent, no, 7 times, na-circulate ng 7 times, yung inflow, okay, nag-grow ng 150%. No? From 100, ang total natin is 250. Okay? So, ano sabi natin kanina? The money grew because it was circulated. Okay? Let's proceed to the theory of circuits of capital by David Harvey. Okay? Ito yung kanyang theory of circuits capital. Sabi dito, yung forms of capital, merong varying return periods. No? Kapag nilagay mo sa manufacturing, okay, mabagal, no? Mabagal yung return period. But when you place it in financial institutions, mabilis yung return. The return is fast. And this explains why we have more banks and malls than manufacturing businesses and agricultural investments. And people invest where perceived return is the greatest. No? Makikita dito sa slide natin, ang pinakamabilis is financial, susunod yung commercial, and pinakamatagal is yung manufacturing. Okay? Pinakamatagal yung return sa manufacturing. Okay. Now let's proceed to the physical and spatial base. Okay, this portion of the source book talks about land supply, natural resources, and then infrastructures. Okay, so we're talking about the supply of land in terms of quantity and quality, as well as the infrastructures na i-assess. Okay, so ano yung ginagamit kapag ina-assess yung land supply? Gumagamit tayo ng mga thematic maps. Okay, and one type of map is the political boundary map. So ito is yung political boundary ng national capital region. Okay. Another map is the land classification map. So this is the land use map of the municipality of Bali. Okay. Next type of map is the slope map. Okay. So makita niyo sa slide yung standard slope range. I think lumabas yata to sa ibang board exams. No? So you need to at least be familiar yung certain percentages. So 0 to 3% is flat or level land. 3 to 8% is level to undulating. 8 to 18% is undulating to rolling terrain. 18% to 30% is rolling to moderately steep hills. 30 to 50% is moderately to steeply mountainous. And then about 50%, that's very steeply mountainous. Okay? And then meron ding mga elevation maps. Okay? Elevation maps are derived from topographic map. It says here, unless more refined categories are designed, only those elevation ranges necessary To understand differences in ecological characteristics may be delineated just as the following. Above 1,000 meters, cool highland; 500 meters to 1,000 meters, warm to cool upland; and then below 500 meters, that's warm lowland. Okay, let's proceed to map overlay seed analysis. So yung map overlay or seed analysis is the process of putting two or more thematic maps on top of each other to determine areas of convergence of certain features of land contributing to the suitability of the area to a particular purpose, and conversely to eliminate or screen out areas that are not suitable for that purpose. So in the past, ang ginagamit nila is yung mga yung mga transparent na materials and then overlay. But right now, gumagamit na tayo ng GIS. No? So what we do is to eliminate or is-screen out mo yung mga not suitable for urban development. And then what is left out, yung iiwanan after identifying those areas which are not suitable, yun lang yung suitable for development. Now, the objective of seed analysis is to determine areas within the local territory that are suitable for future urban expansion and to delineate decision zones. Okay. Merong basis yung determination of how much land is available can be made available for future urban use. And it is based on the following premises. Okay. First, that the creation or production of urban land is done by converting lands that are currently used for non-urban uses, and that this conversion is often irreversible. Okay. Ibig sabihin, once the conversion is effected, the area can no longer be put back to its former use. Okay. Second, the urban activities do not require the natural fertility of the soil. Rather, the subsurface structure and its ability to support buildings of various heights is the more relevant characteristic of urban land. Third, that urban activities can be accommodated at higher densities than non-urban land uses. Hence, the requirement for additional urban space need not be met by conversion of open land all the time. Fourth, that urban activities did not compete for the use of agricultural and forest areas. And fifth, that urban land uses, particularly settlements, must avoid protected areas and areas with environmental hazards. Okay? So, ito yung mga factors that would be considered or that should be considered. No? Kung ilan yung land available or ilang area yung that can be made available for future urban use. Okay, so ang ginagawa kapag na-consider ng itong mga areas na to, again, yung minention natin kanina is screen out yung areas that are not suitable and then may iwanan yung mga suitable areas. It says here to determine, among other things, the areas for reforestation or rehabilitation, incompatible land uses to be corrected, conflicting interests to be reconciled, and proper location of infrastructure and other capital investment projects. And then, what you do next is to conduct the inventory of existing infrastructures. The mga infrastructures can be subdivided into three groupings. First is the economic support infrastructure, such as irrigation systems, power generation, roads, bridges and ports, flood control and damage, and then telecommunications. Flood control and drainage, and then telecommunications. For social support infrastructures, we have schools at all levels, hospitals, all types, waterworks and sewerage, public socialized housing, facilities for socially disadvantaged groups, cultural and sports facilities. And then for public administrative support, we have local government support, facilities for justice administration, mga justice halls, facilities for public safety and protection, such as fire, yung mga offices ng fire services, no? And then yung mga jail facilities. And then public parks and assembly areas. And then, out of these existing infrastructures, no, what you do next is to assess and evaluate the existing systems in relation to the intended population to be served. Now, these are the evaluation criteria of the existing systems. No? First is appropriateness. Appropriateness can be determined by matching the type of infrastructure available with the level of settlement in which it is located and the service area and population the facility is intended to serve. Second is adequacy, and this has to do with the capacity and quality of the infrastructure in relation to the demand for its use. Adequate pa ba yung resources? Two considerations, capacity and quality. So when you look at, say, for example, population growth, you have to consider capacity. And then yung quality. Kaya ba niya i-serve yung X number of people at a certain time. And then the level of utility, the extent to which the facility is put to use. And fourth is accessibility. Okay? Sabi dito, access may be understood in physical terms, say for example, distance or travel time from the user's place of origin. The difficulty and cost of travel is normally in inverse proportion to distance. Access may also be affected by the design and quality of construction of the facility. Now, flashy and stylish designs and sophisticated equipment are normally associated with high income and high social class clientele and may naturally screen off the low income groups from availing of such services and utilities. So, say for example, you have a new area of development, merong bagong residential area in a particular area or in a particular site of your locality, you need to look at this evaluation criteria if there is rather if there is a need to build a new facility to service yung new residential area. Okay? Now, after running through, pag dumaan na dito sa evaluation criteria, eto na yung decision na gagawin ng decision makers. Okay? Ano yung mga actions na gagawin? Say, for example, whether or not i-freeze yung expansion ng existing facilities, so status quo. Second was extend or expand the existing facility. Say, for example, nag-increase in population. Is it still adequate? Or nag-increase in population of a certain area and then pag sinukat yung distance from the facility to that newly populated area, is it still accessible in terms of, say, for example, travel time? Kung merong hinahabol na period, say, emergency. Okay? So, the decision maker has to make a decision whether to expand or extend the existing service or put up new needed facilities. So, ito yung mga alternative actions for facility after daan dun sa evaluation criteria of the existing systems. Okay, next is the natural resources inventory. Okay, the natural resources inventory is a standard inventory of data, and that includes the existing or remaining stock in terms of commercial value or volume, by latest reckoning, the rate of flow or exploitation, the products and services derived from a particular resource, and the protection and conservation measures that are in place. And the inventory also includes those of pertinent laws, administrative issuances, and other relevant policies, because yun yung mag-guide kung isasama pa siya doon sa inventory. Sabi natin, LGUs are empowered to share responsibility with the national government in the management of natural resources and maintenance of ecological balance within their territorial jurisdiction. So pagdating sa natural resource inventory, it includes forests, lands, mines, protected areas, and wildlife. Okay? Now, kapag nag-undertake ng environmental assessment, ginagamit natin yung ecosystem approach, okay, rather than the sectoral approach, no? As in doon sa inventory. So mas prefer yung ecosystem approach. And like in an inventory, yung environmental system follows the pressure state response logic of presentation. Okay? PSR, or the pressure state response. So ano yung pressure? Pressure pertains to the different demands exerted by human society on a given ecosystem. Example, economic, ecological, amenity services for their survival and well-being. State, on the other hand, refers to the existing conditions of the ecosystem as a result of the application of human pressures as well as the threats, human and natural, to the very survival of the ecosystem itself. Ano yung existing or observed condition of the ecosystem? No? Yung pressure, these are different demands. No? Yung response naman includes existing mitigation, rehabilitation, protection, and conservation measures that human society has so far devised to ensure the sustainable use and serviceability of the ecosystem. Okay? So, ito yung ating ginagamit sa environmental assessment, yung ESR or the ecosystem approach. So, ito yung mga ecosystems and subsystems. We have the forest ecosystem na may dalawang subsystems, which is the protected forest and the production forest. And then we have the lowland or agricultural ecosystem na merong three subsystems, specifically the croplands, livestock, and fisheries. And then for the urban system, we have three subsystems. We have the built-up areas, which include residential, commercial, industrial, institutional, utilities, and infrastructure. And then we have the urban wastes, solid, liquid, and hazardous. And then air pollution, which include mobile sources and then stationary sources. And then we have the freshwater ecosystem na may dalawang subsystems. We have surface water and groundwater. And then we have the coastal ecosystem and the minerals and mining na may dalawang subsystems, which is the metallic minerals and non-metallic minerals. And then we have the biodiversity, which covers wild flora and wild fauna. Okay, let's proceed to the local development indicator system. Okay, the LDIS or the local development indicator system portrays information in three dimensions. In three dimensions ngayon, we have topical or sectoral, temporal, and geographical or spatial. Okay, sabi dito, the sectoral spatial data display allows the analyst to appreciate the differences between areas with respect to a given set of characteristics. Okay? On one hand, between the planning area and the larger areas within which it is nested, and between smaller component parts and the planning area. Moreover, the portrayal of data in three dimensions enables the analyst to make more meaningful observations and thereby identify problem situations more systematically and formulate solutions which are placed or specific area. So, paano ginagamit yung LDIS to extract intelligence? Okay? So, merong three steps in problem finding. Okay? This refers to the diagnosis of development issues. So, first is information generation. So, what do the figures mean? Second is extracting intelligence, and you extract intelligence by asking the question, why? Okay, so why is there a change? Okay, why did it happen? So you extract intelligence. I mean, cause. We're identifying cause, and then implications of the observed condition if no significant intervention is exerted by anyone anywhere to change the situation. Okay, so we answer the question. So what? Okay, what if we keep the status quo? So any implications? What if we change the status quo? Okay, no observed condition. No? So ano yung implication? So ito yung three steps in problem finding. Again, first is information generation, extracting intelligence, and implications of the observed condition. If no significant intervention is exerted by anyone, anywhere to change the situation. And then we have the solution finding process. That is determining appropriate policy intervention. So you have the LDIS system, and then you look at the observed condition. So etong nasa kanan, explanations or positive factors, these are our responses to the question why. So yun yung extracting intelligence. No? And then determining appropriate policy interventions, implications when no intervention is introduced. This is yung part ng problem finding, implications when no interventions is introduced. And then based from the process or the explanations and then based on the implications, you craft or you identify policy options. So kasama din sa observed conditions apart from the LBIS is yung results ng map overlay analysis. And then you determine yung mga policy options. So etong figure 3.4 na to is a problem finding and a solution finding analysis. So this is an example of the local development indicators. Um, Divided into sector or subsector. Dito sa sample natin, we have the social sector. So ang subsector niya is demography and level of well-being. And then yung core concerns for that subsector and yung indicator of development or underdevelopment. Okay? And then if you fill in na yung mga data, okay, based doon sa indicator of development or underdevelopment. Okay, let's proceed to chapter 4 or the goal formulation process. Okay, kanina, meron tayo problem finding and solution finding process. May mga lumabas sa board na ganito, no? Problem finding and then solution finding. Let's proceed to the goal formulation process. Goal formulation, or the process of determining what the people want their city or municipality to become, is often considered the most important step in the planning process. And goals serve at least three purposes in the planning process. First is as an end toward which all future actions specified in the plan are directed. Kaya yung goal, minimeasure kung na-achieve siya o hindi, or kung hindi na-achieve, gaano kalayo from that goal. As a set of criteria of evaluating alternative strategies and approaches, and as a standard against which the success or failure of each action is measured. So, na-achieve, then i-determine natin whether success. Kung hindi na-achieve, then probably failure yung action. And then two main parts of the planning process, we have the elaboration of ends and the specification of needs. Hierarchy of goals. Okay, it says here, value is something prized as a great worth and desirability which motivates action. It is held and respected whether or not the completed action is successful. Values held by a person or group are seldom articulated, but they nonetheless motivate behavior in a more general way than goals. Again, yung behavior ng tao is dependent on the things that the person values. No? So yung value nandun siya sa back end, yung behavior nandun siya sa front end. And you behave, or a person behaves in a particular manner depending dun sa mga bagay na kanyang pinakahalagahan. Right? So there are two types of values na dinefine sa social. One is welfare values. Welfare values are those, rather, the possession of which is a necessary condition for continued activity and striving of a person. So, say for example, well-being, wealth, skill, and knowledge. Difference values, those that are taken into consideration in the relationship of a person to others and to oneself. Okay? Example given, we have respect, affection, justice, and righteousness. So, kanina, necessary condition for continued activity and striving of a person. In difference values, they are those that are taken into consideration in the relationship of a person to others and to oneself. Goal is defined as a more specific, desirable state than value. The town, city, province as an environment for living and as a place for making a living. So, etong nauna is outward looking, the desired role. Etong pangalawa is inward looking, which is the desired state of the local government. So, qualities of the people as society, nature of the local economy, state of the natural environment, condition of the built environment, capability of the local leadership. These are all desired state. Yung kanilang desired role naman, they want to identify yung role nila doon sa wider region. Okay? And then, to define their roles in the region, roles of the local government unit of the city in the region. So this is a sample vision statement of the Bupan city. It states, we envision the Bupan city as the premier state of the north for education, information technology, health, commerce and trade, and aquaculture with God-loving, well-intentioned, healthy, self-reliant, empowered, and vigilant citizenry who live in a balanced, planned, attractive, and safe environment, and a globally competitive, diversified, and environment-friendly economy under a firm, decent, and progressive leadership. Okay? So, yung qualities of the people as a society, etong God-loving, well-informed, healthy, self-reliant, empowered, and vigilant citizenry. Yung nature of the local economy, meron siyang global competitive, okay, and diversified. Okay? State of the natural environment, balance, land, attractive, okay? And then condition of the built environment, safe environment. Yung environment-friendly economy is the condition of the built environment and the nature of the local economy. And capability of the local leadership that's firm, decent, and progressive leadership. Okay? Yung partner in national development, no, being a premier center of the North, identification of the wider region to which it relates. Premier center of the North for education, information technology, health, commerce, and trade, and aquaculture. Okay, so ideally, itong vision statement na to, gagamitin to doon sa comprehensive land use plan. No? And then, dadalhin din siya papunta doon sa comprehensive development plan. Okay. And then, balikan natin yung mga indicators, no? Gumagamit ng measures of performance, no? In pursuit of the objectives. So, we have here yung mga success indicators. Etong mga success indicators na to, binabangga niya yung general welfare goal. So, for promotion of health and safety, these are examples, no? Say, for example, health center in every barangay, no? Drug stores or pharmacies in every barangay, no users or users of dangerous drugs, and then physical fitness exercises well attended. So these are sample success indicators. For enhancing the people's rights to a balanced ecology, ang mga examples dito, acceptable ratio of built form to open space, and then clean air monitoring and enforcement is effective. And then plenty of greeneries in public and private places. So these are examples of success indicators for health and safety and people's right to a balanced ecology. And then this is for people's right, rather, itong na-cover natin itong up to 3.7, we have encouragement and support for appropriate self-reliant technology. Some indicators would include technical or vocational schools that are established within the locality, complete coverage for adequate supply of electric power, indigenous property rights protected, native ingenuity recognized, and then regulated use of biotechnology. All right, let's proceed to chapter 5, the comprehensive land use planning process. Okay, it says that the group must be anchored on generic goals of physical planning in the country. And ano yung mga generic goals? One, to effect rational population distribution, to ensure access by the population to basic social services and economic opportunities. Third is to promote sustainable utilization of resources. And fourth is to protect the integrity of the environment. Okay? There are 5 sets of activities in the group formulation process. First is balancing the future demand for and supply of land for urban development. Second is generation and characterization of alternative spatial strategies of urban forms or urban forms, evaluating the alternatives and selecting the preferred strategy. Fourth is detailing the preferred urban form. And then fifth is formulating the land and water use policy framework. Okay? So this is the 12-step process, no, dun sa group planning process. First is to organize. Step 2 is to identify stakeholders. Step 3 is to set the vision or to revisit the vision. Okay? Step 4 is to analyze the situation. Step 5, set the goals and objectives. Step 6 is establish development trust and spatial strategies. Step 7 is to prepare the land use plan. Step 8 is to draft the zoning ordinance. Step 9, conduct public hearing. Step 10, review, adopt, and approve the CLUP and the zoning ordinance. Step 11 is to implement the CLUP and the zoning ordinance. And in step 12 is monitor and evaluate the CLUP and the zoning ordinance. And then, babalik ka sa step 1 if it's time na to may expire na yung CLUP and you need to formulate your new CLUP. Now, I want you to take note etong nag-loop na arrow dito sa step 4. No? You set the vision and then you analyze the situation. And then from the results of the analysis of the situation, pwedeng balikan yung vision statement para ayusin, no? Ano ba yung gagawin sa vision, or kailangan bang may palitan, meron bang isi-speed up, meron bang isi-slow down, no? Meron bang is-change dun sa element ng vision kasi meron kayong nakita dun sa situation analysis results. Okay, so ito yung demand supply balancing. Now, the purpose of demand supply balancing is to determine whether there is adequate supply of land to meet the projected demand for urban development or the built environment. And basically, there are 3 steps. Okay, first is projection of future demand for urban land. Second is assessment of land supply. Okay, so yung una is pinoproject yung future demand. You assess yung land supply at the locality, and then you match the demand with available supply at the locality. Okay? So 3 steps: projection, assessment, and then matching. You match the demand with the available supply. So again, if you have your projected demands and then estimate na yung supply, you check if match, no? Kung nagma-match. Kung hindi nagma-match, okay, then pwedeng you augment the supply or you control the demand. No? So, gagalawin mo tong left and right. You augment the supply. Say, for example, you acquire lots. Or you control the demand. Okay? So, para mag-match. If nag-match na naman, if on the other hand, nag-match yung demand, yung supply, yung projected demands, and yung estimated supply, then you prepare the land use plan. You can draft the land use plan formulation or you revise the land use plan. So, ito yung elaboration nito, balancing, no, yung land supply and demand. So dito sa vision sectoral needs and wants, kailangan hugutin, no, or i-identify ano yung mga areas for development, ano yung subject for development based on the sectoral needs and wants. From there, makukuha nyo yung inyong estimated land requirement, and that would result to the land demand. From dito naman sa supply side, you have the total land area. From the total land area, you subtract the land for protection. Ito yung mga land for protection. NIPAS, non-NIPAS, cultural heritage, ECAS, protection forest, biodiversity areas, high-risk areas, and NPA. Now, that is, pag nasubtract mo na to, ang makukuha mo is the land supply. What you do is to match again yung land demand and then yung land supply. So pag nag-match, ay eto siya. No? You pursue your land use plan formulation or revision. Pag hindi, you augment the supply or you control the demand. Okay. Now, eto yung mga supply management strategies. No? Eto yung ang gagawin mo is paano mag-augment ng supply. Okay? How do you augment the supply? So, ito yung mga strategies. Okay? First is infilling. Okay? That's putting to use in-lying vacant or idle lands within the built-up envelope. Assessing how much land can be added to the supply by infilling requires the conduct of a vacant land survey. Okay? Second is densification. Okay? Densification is increasing density of buildings per land surface area as indicated by the floor area ratio, or the FAR. Okay? You increase the density of buildings per land surface area as indicated in the floor area ratio, and or increasing the occupancy rate of existing multi-story structures. Okay? So pwedeng increase mo yung density ng buildings per land surface area, or pwedeng sabay, or pwedeng isang strategy, pwedeng i-increase yung occupancy rate of existing multi-story structures. That is also one way of densification. Third is urban renewal or redevelopment. Okay, this refers to the conversion of slums and blighted areas from one-story makeshift dwellings to permanent medium-sized walk-up apartments that easily increases residential density. Okay. Fourth is reclamation. Okay. Reclamation is producing new urban land by filling or draining portions of a lakeshore, a seashore, and similar waterfront areas, provided that the resulting alternation of natural ecosystems will not result in serious ecological imbalance. It is a supply augmentation scheme worth considering for local government units na hindi makapag-expand on the other side. Next is agricultural land conversion. Okay, agricultural land conversion should be limited to agricultural lands with relatively low suitability for cultivation to major food or cash crops. And these areas are designated by the DSWM, okay, of the DNR as conditionally restricted areas for conversion. Okay. Agricultural lands designated as highly restricted should be considered no-touch or non-negotiable areas. Okay. Now, take note that this augmentation process is an iterative one. Okay. After the effect of each option is added to the estimated supply, the new total is matched with the demand. When a deficit still exists, then the next supply augmentation measure is considered incrementally until a match is reached. So, magsa-start muna dito sa infilling. No? So, iterative yung process. Kung may deficit pa rin, then pupunta sa next supply augmentation measure. Okay, until mag-match yung demand and supply. Okay, kung merong supply management strategies, meron namang mga demand strategies. Time check, time is 3 o'clock. Shai, Ralph?
We can take a 10-minute break. So we can resume the session at 3:11 po. See you in 10 minutes, guys.